Welcome to the Soapy Brain Podcast. I am your host, Kat, with my co-host, Hammer.
Hey, hey.
And today we are talking about the Salem witch trials and the hauntings that followed. So, growing up in Massachusetts, I still have never gone to Salem, which is surprising given how much I love witchiness.
Witchiness?
Witchiness.
Is that a new word? Did we just come up with a new word?
Yes.
I like it. I'm going to call the dictionary people.
But
Webster Dictionary.
growing up in school, we barely talked about the Salem witch trials. So it was pretty interesting to do more research into the trials themselves because I've watched a TV show that's actually called Salem, and it goes off the basis of the Salem witch trials. It's definitely an interesting show and has an interesting take on it, but it was nice to get the actual facts that happened.
What were the actual facts?
Let's get into it. So the Salem witch trials were between February of 1692 and May of 1693 in Salem, Massachusetts, led by the Puritans that were in the town. Before this, though, a witch hunt happened in Europe from the 1300s until about the 1600s, right before it.
Jeez.
Yeah, for 300 years, there was an entire witch hunt all throughout Europe where tens of thousands of people were slaughtered.
On top of the Black Plague
Yes.
and other misfortunes, man, could you survive in the medieval times of London? Nope.
No. But during the Salem witch trials, more than 200 people were accused of witchcraft. 59 of those people were tried, 31 of them were found guilty, and 20 of them were executed. This included
Oh my
men,
goodness.
women, and children. And all of this started because two young girls, Abigail Williams, who was 11 years old, and her cousin Elizabeth, who was 9. Elizabeth was actually the daughter of the town's minister, Samuel Parris. They started having fits of throwing things, screaming, making strange noises, and comforting themselves in contorted positions. Then another girl began having the same symptoms. Her name was Anne Putnam Jr., and she was 12 years old. A doctor determined all three of these girls were under witchcraft.
A medical doctor.
Yes, a medical doctor. And
Well, that girl is pissed. She's scaring those guys. Look at her witchery throwing those books.
these girls then began reporting that unseen forces were attacking them. The three girls accused Tituba, who was a Caribbean slave woman from the Parrish family, Sarah Good, who was the town beggar, and Sarah Osborne, an elderly poor woman in town. Both the Sarahs pled innocent, but Tituba confessed guilty and said that there were several other witches in town.
What's
In
wrong with
all,
that little girl on the floor?
in all the hysteria, even two dogs were accused of witchcraft.
they, they accused two dogs.
Yes, two dogs were accused of witchcraft and unfortunately were killed.
What, were they hung?
I didn't want to look into how the dogs were killed because that kind of.
Right. You know, that's just going too far. Witches, fine. Warlocks, fine. But dogs, that's where I draw the line.
The girls ended up just having, I think it's pronounced ergotism, which is from eating foods that contain the fungus ergot. And this includes like the symptoms
What?
of spasms, vomiting, hallucinations, and delusions. It also didn't help that there was politics within the church going on, and as well as family feuds. People wanted land and power all over others in the small town.
Here we go with the land grabs.
This is a great example, though, of mass hysteria, which is just the contagious ideas of large groups that cause anxiety. And unfortunately, 20 people sadly lost their lives because of it.
Hey, that's a pretty good photo from 1692.
I believe it's a painting.
Psh, whatever.
But I like this woman in the corner being held up all dramatically as this other guy's just laying on her.
Right? What's wrong with that guy? Is he drunk? Are they all drunk? What's going on here?
No, in the middle, you can see the woman that's being inspected for witches' marks. And that's something that would happen is the women would have to completely strip naked if they were accused of witchcraft, and they would inspect every inch of their body looking for the witch's marks.
Oh my goodness. And what was the witch's marks?
It could be something from a mole to like a extra nipple to birthmark, anything that wasn't normal.
So
They
anyway could be a witch.
exactly. So
From the said witch's mark.
exactly. So that's how unfortunately a lot of these women were seen as women and men were seen as witches.
Oh my goodness. But only 20 of them had the witch's mark.
Only 20 of them were sentenced to the gallows.
Sentenced to the gallows. So, and who are these people? What they were the Puritans
The Puritans, yes.
who moved to America in like the 1630s or something.
Yes.
Fucking Puritans. Ah, look at these poor people. Are they poor or are they just wandering around? What's going on here?
I think these are the people being
This is a horrible photo.
walked to the gallows.
Oh my goodness, what misery. I wonder how many how many witches were killed in the wintertime versus summertime. Like, she's not a witch in December, but wait till July. Because it's too cold out. And nobody wants to walk through 3 feet of snow.
And here is Salem currently.
Hey, look at currently. Oh, I thought it was another photo from like 1675 or something. It's like a pretty good vehicle
No,
then.
but you can see kind of how compact it is.
What street is this? Is this like some of the original buildings or
I'm not sure. I know
like
this
the
is a
church?
there's the church, and I think in the back here you can see I don't
How
know,
long has that pond been back there?
I don't know if you can see my mouse, but right here I believe is the witch's house.
Ooh, the witch's house.
But
That's all I have.
because of this, Salem is haunted. And is it because of those who were unjustly sentenced to their death? Or is it just because it's an old city?
So now there's witches, ghosts haunting the town of Salem.
Witch ghosts, yes.
Flying around on their brooms with their cats, throwing books at people.
And here's
Salem.
the museum, which you can see is kind of in the center of town, which we saw from the other picture.
Is this graveyard in the museum?
No, so this is the Old Burying Point Cemetery. It is the second oldest cemetery in the country.
What's the first oldest?
Uh, it is in Boston, I believe.
Of course it is.
But this cemetery was established in 1637 and it holds some historically important people from the witch trials. Jonathan Hawthorne, who was the judge during the witch trials, is one of the names you'll find buried here. I believe it is if you are facing out of the gate, he's on the left hand side, and you can find his grave over there.
I'm
But
sure the bodies moved since then. It's a
who
joke.
knows? I don't want
Maybe.
to go dig him up.
Let's go find out. Hey, I got a couple of shovels.
But the memorial for those who were wrongly accused during the trial, so the 20 people, is also found in the graveyard. And Hawthorne, I found out, was not legally trained to be a judge, but he was trusted and wealthy. So people just took his word.
Oh.
He never apologized for his part in the Salem witch trials. So he thinks he did no wrong.
Is this
This is just another view of the cemetery. It has the people that were buried here. So you've got a Mayflower passenger and then the witchcraft court Justice
that's
John
cool.
Hopkins.
Look at that apartment building. Your backyard is a tombstone or a graveyard.
Oh, I know. Creepy.
That'd be so awesome. At least you know nobody's in your backyard annoying you.
But it may be the spirits that are haunting there because people have successfully captured EVP voices at the cemetery as well as photographs of apparitions.
You mean like cackling ghosts?
I don't know if they're cackling or just talking.
I think either way. If they're not talking about spells, then what's the point?
There are 347 people buried here, though, and it has now reached
The whole
maximum
town.
capacity.
What's maximum capacity?
300,
Yeah.
347, apparently,
Well, all right.
because that's how many people are buried here until they stopped burying and they moved to a different cemetery. It is believed, though, that Hawthorne's ghost wanders through the cemetery, as well as Mary Bright Corey, who is the wife of Giles Corey, and he was one of the victims of the witch trials and was tortured to death on the 8-year anniversary of her death.
All right.
But this cemetery is one of the hot spots in Salem because it is said that people cannot go in here without seeing a ghost or two while they visit.
Hey, that's my house.
This is actually called the Joshua Ward House,
Oh, all right.
and it is
Not the Hammer House.
said to be haunted by George Corwin and Giles Corey. It was actually built after the trials in 1784, but the land was owned by Sheriff George Corwin.
So who's
And
Sheriff George Corwin?
he is one of they didn't really have police as we know today. They had the sheriffs and then the deputies and blah, 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 blah. And he was one of the ones that was the sheriff that saw people to their death.
So what? People just like he was probably trusted and wealthy, and oh, let's make him a sheriff, but maybe not as wealthy as the other guy. So that's why he was
He
a sheriff.
was pretty wealthy, and I will get into kind of how much of an ass he is. So he died in 1697, and his body was buried in what is now the basement of this house. But when they
He was
started building
buried in the basement of this house.
no, when they started building it, they moved him to the cemetery,
Oh,
and his spirit is thought to have stayed behind.
that'd be
And
cool.
so Giles Corey is the one that's pretty much tied to him. And unfortunately, it's kind of a gruesome way that he passed, but
Yeah. Go on. Give us some details.
he was crushed to death by stones.
Hell yeah! Like, what was he doing? Like, did the witches throw these stones at him, or?
No, so he was accused of being a warlock.
Okay, so let me guess. He was doing some warlocky stuff, and his little spell failed, and then the stones like fell on him.
No, so it is thought
He
that
fell
Corwin
on.
his wanted Corey's land so that he
Ah,
when he passed it was supposed to go to his next of kin, which I believe was his daughter. I think he either had two daughters or was a daughter and son. He had a daughter.
women
And
can't own land.
exactly. So Corwin tried to go in and take her land that was given to her by her father. Remember how I
Ah,
said he's kind of an ass?
yeah.
So he had Giles Corey put to death by being crushed by stone, and Corwin like watched the whole thing happen. And Corey's last words were "more weight."
Jeez, more weight. So how was he crushed by stones? Like were they putting him on top of his body,
Yes,
or?
so he was laid down on a piece of wood, and then another piece of wood was laid across his body, like his
Oh
chest
my
to his legs.
goodness.
And they would just keep adding stones on top of that. And he never pled guilty, never pled innocence. But the last thing he said before he died was "more weight." And they put a final stone, and he unfortunately passed.
What a psychopath.
But
Everybody
it
was crazy back then. I'll show you how strong I am. More weight.
Sheriff George Corwin is thought to still be in this house because he was known to choke people in life, and people are said to feel like they're being choked when they enter this home. So they believe it's him still there. And it's believed that Corey is still behind because since Corwin was the one that killed him, when he died, he just started haunting him. And so now they're
Just
in
the,
an eternal battle of you're a bastard.
just the over the last 300 years. Is this the same house, just a different angle?
Same house, different angle, older picture. But you can see kind of how I was kind of hoping, like, if we looked and squinted in the windows, could we see anybody? But I've checked the windows several times and I don't see anything. The only thing I can see is this kind of like weird thing right here, but I think it's dust. It kind of looks like a face.
Where at? Where's
This
your mouse?
this middle window right here, this small corner.
Uh, this if you go down the lower right hand corner is like, is that broken window or is that just a reflection? Maybe a tree off to the side.
I think it's a tree.
Uh, there's a lot of windows back then.
Well, they didn't have electricity, so they needed light somehow.
What they had cameras.
And this is the old Salem
Oh,
jail, which has
ugly
been turned
chicken.
into apartments with an attached restaurant and has been known to
Whoa,
have.
whoa, whoa! Back up, back up. This is an apartment, and this is the restaurant part, obviously.
Yes, I couldn't find pictures of the apartments, obviously, because people live in them. But the old Salem jail was turned into apartments and a restaurant because it got closed down.
That's because there weren't any more witches to kill.
People have said, though, whether they are living there in the apartments or if they are eating in the restaurant, they have a spooky feeling as they're sitting there. They've experienced cold spots and apparitions. And this was actually where this jail was built. So it was built after the Salem witch trials. But this is the site where
Uh,
Giles Corey was murdered during the Salem witch trials.
uh, okay.
And it being a prison before shutting down, there is an apparition of a prison guard seen standing in the corner holding a clipboard. This poor guy, even after death, cannot get a day off.
Oh my goodness, what's that? Oh, no, nothing. It's just nothing.
So the next place is called the Lyceum, and it's also a seafood place called Turner's Seafood. And it is believed to be haunted by Bridget Bishop, who was one of the first women executed during the trials. The land that the Lyceum sits on was originally her orchard, and she's seen most often on the staircase in a long white period style dress. And another one of the haunted places that doesn't really have any ties with the Salem witch trials other than the fact that it was also on Bridget's orchard land is called the Hawthorne Hotel. It is actually one of the most haunted hotels in Salem. So I know you, a skeptic, really should book your hotel room there soon because it fills up pretty fast.
Let's go.
And she wasn't a bad looking woman. And unfortunately, she was one of the first women that was put to death. Not one of the first accused, but one of the first ones that was actually hung. And I'm assuming this picture, this staircase right here, is where she's seen.
Bridget Bishop. Hang on, hang on. I'm kind of reading up on her a little bit. Norwich, England, 1632. Died June 10th. And then she died. She was executed June 10th, 1692. Then exonerated on October 31st of 2001. It only took 300 years to exonerate her.
Yes, actually, the last witch was exonerated in October of 2022.
What? That was just like a year ago ish.
Exactly. It took that long for her to not be deemed a witch anymore.
Hey, look, it's my house.
I know it's very gothic. It's known as the witch's house, but also the house of the seven gables. And it was the home of Jonathan Corwin. I don't know if he has any relation to George Corwin or if just it's a really popular last name like Smith is. But Jonathan Corwin was a judge and a key player during the trials. And it is the witch's house is actually the only remaining original building from the witch trials, so like 1692. The witch's house is one of the more haunted places just because it is one of the original structures. And Corwin was actually responsible for 19 people to be hung. I don't know who was responsible for the 20th, but he was responsible for pretty much everybody's sentenced to the gallows.
And who is this guy?
He was a judge.
Oh, the wealthy judge that people respected.
And it is pretty haunted. It's now a museum, so nobody lives there anymore. It's just people come in and visit, but guests have experienced cold spots, being touched, and the voice of a child.
There's always a voice of a child.
In this case, though, it is thought to be tied to the Corwin's curse, which is where all of Corwin's children died young.
And how many kids did he have?
I think it was at least four. So all of he has no, like, there's no one to like pass this down to. That's why it ended up just becoming a museum, is because there was nobody in his lineage to pass it down to. His name died with him.
Ah, wow. Let's see.
Here's the museum on the inside. It kind of just holds everything that was what it was like back then.
So I wonder if the table, like the table, was where it was back in the 1600s.
I think everything's been moved around so more people can walk through it.
That makes sense. Get out of my house. No wonder it's haunted. Get the hell out of my house. Stop moving my furniture around. That's a great photo from 1692.
And this is supposedly Gallows Hill, which is where, you know, it's been up for debate where the witches were actually hung. Some people say it's Gallows Hill, other people say it's Proctor's Ledge.
So
It's
I think
just,
there's more focus on Gallows Hill, but then like some people say it was really far away, but then that doesn't make any sense because back then, like, yeah, I think kind of like right here.
it's up for debate because some people say it was hung in town as a spectacle, and other people saying they actually, this picture is of Proctor's Ledge, where it's also believed, you can see it's kind of far from town, but it's believed they were hung and then tossed into the ravine.
Jeez, man, just no respect for the dead. The witch is dead. Dead witches.
Here's also another kind of sketch of what the kind of walk would be. So this ravine here is where the bodies would be, and they were hung from one of these trees and just thrown in.
What psychopaths?
It is determined, though, that both of these places, no matter what, are very haunted, and many hear screaming from the area, as well as a lady dressed in white, cold spots, a disembodied voice, and numerous orbs in photographs and video have been captured.
Orbs. A witch orb.
And then this is just a memorial to like Proctor's Ledge, of another memorial to the witches.
I think it's funny. A witch orb. That is absolutely hilarious to me.
But these places are only a small part of the hauntings in Salem. Due to it being founded in 1626, there have been a lot of deaths in town, leading to more of the places to be haunted that are not just tied with the Salem witch trials. If you're interested in the history there are plenty of resources online that you can find information. I looked up Ghost City Tours, and they have all of the places listed on there that are haunted and why they're haunted and who they're haunted by.
Who are they haunted by?
Just there's a woman that's seen, and she's in a blue dress and she's got a picnic basket and a little boy with her, and it was thought that she was killed in a fire.
A lot of fires back then.
Well, yeah, everything was candlelight or fireplace.
Ah.
But I think it would be interesting to do a part two of this and us actually go to Salem and try to
Ooh.
capture something.
Ooh. Are we going on a witch hunt or are we going on a ghost hunt?
A ghost hunt. I don't believe any of these poor women were actually witches. I believe
That's
that
where you and I differ. I think they're all witches.
I think they were just women and men ahead of their time. There was some that would work with different herbs to kind of help heal, or they just had more medical information than it was supposed to be, and they were seen as a witch as a result. They were just poor people who were a air quote stain on the town, so people wanted to get rid of them, or it's just people wanted their land.
So Bob wanted Bob's land, Bob Two's land, and like, hey everybody, Bob beeth a witcheth.
Well, the same, like the thing with Giles Corey and George Corwin. Corwin wanted Corey's land, and unfortunately that didn't happen. And so somebody innocent had to die. And it's actually sad because Corey's third wife, Martha, was actually accused of witchcraft as well to get her out of the picture as well. But I just want to thank everybody for listening, and remember to like and subscribe to keep up to date with our new content when it releases. I think we're up to 6 subscribers now, so thank you everybody for subscribing, especially since we've only released one video so far. And I'm Kat with my co-host Hammer, and stay soapy, y'all.
And check out Life's Horrors. I need to finish a part 2 to the Sylvia Likens story, which I should be doing shortly. And that's about it for right now. Thank you, everybody.